But that's just an observation that he made.
We're waiting to hear from the police as soon as that briefing happens. Could be as soon as 6 o'clock. Lisa Chavarria is there. We'll go directly to the podium as soon as Superintendent Eddie Johnson takes the stage.
Can we go back to what you were saying, Phil, about they're being trained to go right for the shooter, that is their job one, is to stop the shooter. And if you look at that timeline that you were talking about earlier, the first radio call came in at 3:16. The shooter was shot at 3:29. So in a very quick period of time, with everything that was going on, trying to figure out who was the shooter, where is the shooter, is there a second shooter, the police really did a very quick job of getting to that shooter.
Yeah, this all goes back to what I've always said. You know, when everyone else is running away, the police are running toward the guy with the gun, which is completely the opposite of what's the instinct of everyone who wants to flee. And again, remember that as you just heard in that sound, they're getting reports that this is a shooting that's taking place outside. Okay, where's the gunman? Let's find him outside. Then suddenly they're getting reports inside. Do we have more than one gunman? Is there still someone outside? Do we now need to worry about two different scenarios, two different crime scenes, if you will? So yeah, I mean, when you look at this, when you had everything neutralized in, what is that, 12 minutes? That's pretty quick.
It is unclear how many guns this gunman had. It seems to be clear that there was only one gunman. He was shot and he is dead. It seems clear that the shooting started outside in the parking lot between the gunman and apparently a woman that he may have known because they were talking. The witness who described that shooting in very graphic details did not say whether he was using a rifle or a handgun for that, but the police say when they saw him, he had a rifle.
Let's go up to Mike Lorber. He is in Sky 5. He's been bringing us these live pictures of the scene over Mercy Hospital. And Mike, the number of blue lights flashing has not decreased in all the time we've been on the air this afternoon.
Allison, it goes from one situation to another. As we spoke about around 3:15, the initial dispatch of shots fired several here to Mercy Hospital. There was an EMS Plan 3 called, which eventually brought 15 ambulances to the scene. Some of those ambulances had to go down to the University of Chicago. A, as we've spoken about, Mercy Hospital is not a trauma center, and B, University of Chicago is. Furthermore, obviously with a chaotic active shooter situation inside Mercy Hospital, nobody can be treated. And we saw about a half an hour later and followed the Chicago police officer that was following a police transport from Mercy Hospital down Cottage Grove, eventually to the University of Chicago Hospital. We keep hearing on the dispatch more and more activity, more officers heading towards the University of Chicago. Now the investigative process begins and we hear more officers coming in here. They have to see where the shell casings are, and even though there are several witnesses, they have to do all of the forensics and all of the investigation. One other note that is important, nearby at 27th and Martin Luther King Drive, there was a dispatch much earlier saying that friends and family of not only the employees of the hospital, patients can go there and await word and await for the patients and the employees who were lucky enough to get away from this safely and meet them over there. So still a lot of activity, dozens of officers here at Mercy Hospital at 26th and Michigan, more gathering for one of their own who last we heard is in critical condition down at the University of Chicago, and we will keep you posted here on any developments. We're live here in the Bronxville neighborhood. I'm Mike Lorber in Sky 5.
All right, thank you, Mike. You've been following this since it all began this afternoon, as has Phil Rogers. We say that it ended pretty quickly. It ended. People there, it seemed like
it had to seem like it went for hours. And NBC5's Marianne Ahern is relaying some information. The police are investigating whether the shooter was an ex-fiancé. Shot the female attending physician and a bystander. A witness at the hospital intervened, was wounded. Was not clear where that person maybe was treated. But again, you can even see some citizens trying to intervene in this situation to try to bring it to an end.
And again, Phil Rogers, thank you so much for keeping us up to date on how police are responding and have responded to this incident this afternoon at Mercy Hospital. This is the NBC5 News at 6 o'clock. We are continuing to follow breaking news at Mercy Hospital in Chicago.
Eyewitnesses relive the chaos that happened inside Mercy Hospital.
It was pow, 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 pow. It's like exchange.
Chaos. 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 You ever seen a zebra get loose in a zoo? That's what it was like.
One of the undercover cops, he was outside screaming, "Get out of the area, there's an active shooter, he has a rifle."
An active shooter opened fire, sending many more ducking for cover this afternoon. We've been on the air with the story since 3:40. Here's what we know right now. At least 4 people are injured, including a Chicago police officer. We're told he is in critical condition. The gunman is dead. The shooting happened just after 3 this afternoon at Mercy Hospital at 25th and Michigan. Here's some of the chilling audio from police scanners.
We have team coverage of several crews outside of Mercy Hospital, but we're going to begin right now with Lisa Chavarria. She is at the University of Chicago Medical Center, where officials are holding a news conference on the update of that officer being treated there. Lisa.
Well, good evening, Allison. Yes, we are still waiting on that press conference. I want to go ahead and show you what this looks like here. We were moved inside. Again, we saw a number of Chicago police officers that had gathered outside. Many of them have now also moved inside as they are waiting on official word to come down from Chicago police as to the condition, once again, of their colleague. At this point, we are told by Chicago police that this officer is in critical condition. He was rushed from Mercy Hospital from that shooting here to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where once again, I am also told by a source that it appears as though the officer may have been wounded somewhere in the upper portion of the officer's body. We are told again in critical condition at this point. We are still waiting on this press conference. We're expecting it to happen as early as now, but at this point we are still waiting for Superintendent Eddie Johnson and other fellow Chicago police officers and other higher ranking officers to arrive here. But again, we've been seeing a number of them. I just want to also tell you, when we've been standing in here, obviously everyone is incredibly somber and sad because of what happened. And so many of the officers, as they've been walking through here with one another, consoling each other, you can see some of them have been crying. It's been a very difficult day for the Chicago Police Department. And again, at this point, we are still waiting on that press conference to start. We were told it could happen as early as now, but again, as soon as it happens, we will bring that to you. Robin, Allison, I'll send it back to you.
And again, I know I just want to pass along to our viewers, the Chicago Police asking for everyone's prayers tonight for that officer who was critically injured in this shooting at Mercy Hospital.
Trina Orlando has been there all afternoon. Trina, what do you have?
Of Mercy Hospital, where there continues to be a huge police presence at this hour. Take a look behind me here and you can see a little bit of what is going on. The road outside of the hospital remains closed at this hour, and we are continuing to see employees making their way out of the hospital, all of them telling us one thing, that they are very anxious to go home and hug their loved ones this evening. We talked to one woman who tells us she was hiding inside the building in a locked room for about a half an hour. She says during that time she was able to send a text message to her children to let them know that she was okay, but she says she is just thankful to be alive today after a very, very frightening situation here at Mercy Hospital. Of course, that is just one of many tales we are hearing today from people who witnessed the shooting, from people who heard the shots, and here's another witness we spoke to earlier today.
It looked like he was turning and pointing at people at random. It looked like he wasn't shooting any one person here, just started shooting.
It just didn't feel like it was real. As we were standing here, more and more cops come and they would pull and stop right in front of us, jump out of their vehicles and grab automatic rifles. And as I was standing here, they were coming from behind me. They were coming from every part of the streets, and they all had guns out. And I wasn't sure if I should run and try to seek better shelter or what I should do.
I ran inside the building to alert the receptionist and the nurse. They are shooting outside. Next thing you know, we hear Cold Silver over the speaker. That means go and retreat and lock yourself in where you are, because obviously the suspect is in the building.
It's unbelievable, you know, but you just never know.
So many different stories today from so many people who were both inside the hospital and also outside of the hospital when these shots rang out. So many people with so many stories to tell, and all of them very frightened but thankful to be alive this afternoon. We are live outside of Mercy Hospital. I'm Trina Orlando. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Trina. And we are continuing to work this story here from the newsroom as well. We have found out that police are now investigating whether the shooter was an ex-fiance, shot the female attending physician, and that a bystander witness at the hospital intervened and was wounded. And we're not sure where that person is being treated. But again, we are continuing to follow that there was probably a relationship between the shooter and one of the victims.
Because there was definitely a conversation before the shooting began. This is going to come out during the news conference that we're waiting for. Dick Johnson has been talking to families, employees, and people waiting outside who had patients inside. Dick, what's the latest on your vantage point?
And Robin Allison, just referring back to the pharmacist I interviewed about 15 minutes ago, who did talk about that arguing that was apparently going on between the shooter, it is believed, and the attending physician, the argument going on before the shooting actually happened. She was hearing it barricaded inside the pharmacy. But yes, we have heard all sorts of stories. It's one thing for these employees to have gone through active shooter training, their annual training just last month. It's another thing to live it in real life, which they just had to do this afternoon. We talked to them. We also talked to some patients, including Tracy Lyons, who had just gone through a radiation treatment when all this broke loose.
I had to fall on my knees to my car because the gunshots were so close. You could tell it was either right here. He wasn't in the building yet. But when that Charger flew and jumped the curb and made a right, and then the police pulled in, and they exchanged fire like bow, bow. They shot the police car.
My coworkers are amazing. They grabbed the people in the lobby. They helped them in the back. They started locking doors. We started barricading the doors with the hospital beds.
Are you talking patients you were dealing with?
Well, patients, we passed them in the back. They were by themselves in the lobby. So we made sure they were in the back with us safe. And then we followed protocol.
Did you lock the door? I'm sorry, you about to say that.
Yeah, we locked the doors. We barricaded them and just stayed in the back until we were escorted out by the police.
For multiple people we talked to, including some who live in the neighborhood right across from Mercy Hospital, it was hard to make sense of exactly what was happening at first. Just 10 blocks north of here, there was a whole slew of TV trucks shooting a TV show or a movie, and at first they weren't sure what was happening here, if that was just part of some staging. But in fact, it was very, very real. Live at 26 in Michigan, Dick Johnson, NBC 5 News.
All right, thanks, Dick. At first, you don't want to believe this is really happening. You're hoping it's just a TV show, but it turns out to be very real indeed.
And a lot of people still processing what they saw today. Natalie Martinez, again, has been talking to people who have been leaving Mercy Hospital, cleared to leave the hospital after this active shooter situation. And Natalie, tell us what you're finding out right now.
Things had slowed down in this corner at 26th and Michigan, and we just ran into Trisha Ranella. She was on the surgery floor earlier today. We're so happy you're okay and you can talk to us about this. Tell us, Trisha, what happened when you were inside and what you did?
Well, patients started running to our department, which you do need special access to get in, but somebody must have came open and they just flooded in. And just yelling active shooter. You know, there's a shooter in the emergency room. So we all went into my office. There's about 8 of us. They went in there, locked the door, put the Xerox machine up against the door, and just waited quietly. It was terrifying.
And how long was that, Trisha?
It seemed like eternity, but it was about maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
And how did you know it was okay to leave?
When we heard a knock at the door, we were still afraid to say who it is, but then we heard police, and then they got us out. They said to go to the main lobby, and we all huddled in the main lobby for hours.
So you huddled there. What were you feeling? What were you thinking? And how did you find out about what had actually gone down?
It was terrifying. It was very, really terrifying. You always think it's not going to happen to you, but you know, everybody really has to be prepared for something like this. You know.
You said, in fact, you were prepared. Tell us how.
Well, all the employees have to watch educational video about active shooting, and we just got through watching one of those this week, past week. And everybody did kind of go as protocol. Yeah.
So what did you take from that you applied today?
Well, we really couldn't get out because we couldn't run the front door because that's where they were running to. So we locked the door. It's either run hide or fight. He did.
Which was a good idea. And then, could you hear anything on the outside? We heard stories of several gunshots.
I personally did not hear the gunshots. It was a little further down, but you know, we heard it was pretty quiet. We were just, and that was probably more scary, just like waiting. But like I said, once we heard voices, then it was the police.
At any time, did you think this person is going to come in and I'm going to see this person face to face, or did you feel anything?
Yeah, that was very real possibility, very scary.
And how were you going to prepare yourself?
I don't know.
When you got out, did you immediately call your family members? What is it that you did that was most important?
My phone was lit up because it was already all over the news and everybody was, you know, asking everything how it was.
And they know you work there?
Yes.
And how long have you worked there, and on what floor?
I've been here 3 years.
Okay. And certainly never thought this was.
No.
What floor are you on?
First floor.
So that's where all the activity was as well?
Yes.
When you came out of the hospital, did you see anything that would indicate what happened out there? Did you see that parking lot with the crowds?
No, because the main lobby's on the opposite side of where it happened.
Okay. Thank you so much, Patricia Ranella. We really appreciate your time. So glad that you're okay and that you took the time to meet with us. We appreciate it. Stories like this coming out of the hospital. Ms. Ranella is one of the people who's going to go home and get warm and really think about all that training that they had just days before this happened. We're going to send it back to you guys.
Important information, run, hide, fight. You'll hear that over and over in such training. Also, Chicago Fire reporting now the final that the Chicago Fire Department transported one police officer to UFC Critical, and also a third victim was transported to Northwestern Critical. The offender was at Mercy and pronounced dead on arrival.
Mercy Hospital is not a trauma center. The University of Chicago is. Mike Lorber's in Sky 5. The police officer in critical condition at last report was taken to the University of Chicago Hospital, Mike.
Rob, we followed that transport about half an hour after the shooting began from Mercy Hospital as a police escorted ambulance number 41, taking that officer down here to the University of Chicago Medical Center, of course, which just became a certified trauma center a few years ago. As they start to clear the scene at Mercy Hospital, they had to block some streets off, 26th Street, for example, just to keep traffic away, keep buses from going through. Some of those streets are being opened up. We are hearing and seeing more and more officers coming from Mercy Hospital down here to the South Shore, to the University of Chicago Hospital, to check on their critically injured officer, get an update here, and we can see underneath the canopy of the emergency room and then outside near Washington Park where several officers are gathered. But a lot of those streets by Mercy Hospital, as I said, have been reopened. Some officers are still there. They have a lot of investigating to do, and it seems like a lot of the rest of the officers are coming down here to the University of Chicago where they are just awaiting word. We're live here over the University of Chicago Hospital. I'm Mike Lorber in Sky 5.
Mike, thanks. It's going to be a massive crime scene to process, and that process is just beginning.
Mercy Hospital is actually Chicago's oldest hospital, and it comes with a lot of history. Marianne Ahern has been working that part of the story for us tonight. Let's bring her in to this coverage. Marianne.
Yes, good evening to you, Allison. Mercy Hospital was opened some 160 years ago.
Wow.
It is the city's oldest hospital. It was Chicago's very first hospital. It is now the main Illinois Women's Cancer Center. Mercy absorbed patients from Michael Reese Hospital when it closed, and it is a level 2 trauma center. Many years ago, back in 1912, former President Theodore Roosevelt was shot in Milwaukee during a presidential campaign, and he was taken to Mercy Hospital where he was treated for 8 days. As for the scene there tonight, we have heard from witnesses about security at the hospital during all of this crisis.
Not a lot. A few security guards inside the hospital, no guards patrolling the parking lot. There was a security guard truck in front of the hospital emergency. That's all I saw when I walked in and walked out.
Of course, from those that we have talked to, there are still employees that are still inside the hospital, not all of them able to speak to their loved ones just yet. And it being a 290-bed hospital, there are patients to care for as well. We can't forget all of that that's going on in the midst of this investigation. That is the latest from here. Marianne Ahern, back to you. Allison and Rob.
Mercy Hospital certainly has seen a lot over the years. Thanks, Marianne, but I think it's safe to say it's never seen something like this.
No, it has been a traumatic day for so many people. Again, our hearts going out to Chicago police officers impacted by this shooting tonight. Again, the police have been asking for everyone's prayers as this officer has been stated to be in critical condition at University of Chicago Hospital. We are on standby right now, hoping to go to a police news conference to get the very latest, not only on his condition, but also what information they have been able, this is a picture now of the University of Chicago hospitals where they do have a trauma center now available to that area of the city, and that is where the police officer was treated tonight. We have new information.
Yeah, Phil Rogers has some new information coming in. You've been putting things together all afternoon. What do you have, Phil?
Yeah, Rob, the investigative unit has been listening back to the radio calls all afternoon, and producer Courtney Copenhagen decided to go back a little bit before the shooting and listen to the radio traffic. And what we've discovered is that there was a police call to the hospital, a report of a man with a gun, and they actually had a description of what they thought that scenario was. Here it is.
They're not ready.
Okay, we are still efforting to get the Broadcastify dispatch, but this really has given us such insight into how police worked this scene.
Yeah, and it's important that we know when we play you these police calls, what we do is we sort of take out the gaps. So what you're not hearing is everything in real time, because some of what we will take out is some of the chaotic moments, some of the reports of just police officers talking to each other, where do I go, that kind of thing, to try to boil it down to the nuts and bolts. Here is that sound. You can hear exactly what was going on in the seconds prior to the shooting.
193 units and one on the citywide, for this person with a gun, 2525 South Michigan, coming in with details to follow. Male Hispanic, 25. Carla says she doesn't see the gun, but he's going to be the shooter and himself. All right, we're getting another call in front of the emergency room for that person with a gun in front of Mercy's emergency room. We're getting a male white, black hat, white hoodie, and black coat. Says he has a gun and he's threatening his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend. All units, we're getting a 10-1 outside of Mercy Hospital. No further information. Shot fired in front of Mercy Hospital.
We got a HPC. He's in the parking lot. He's in the parking lot, gun in his hand.
Alright, yeah, we're in the parking lot with the gun in his hand.
Live shot fired, squad.
We have live shots fired, 4 shots fired in the parking lot of Mercy Hospital.
There's a woman down in the parking lot.
Alright, we'll get him running.
Come on, we need more harder. We have to get inside this hospital, squad.
Any available units to Mercy Hospital, all available units to Mercy Hospital. We have a shooter inside the hospital.
This guy's got a rifle. Be careful, guys, where he's got shooting. Assault rifle.
Alright, he has an assault rifle. All units be aware he has an assault rifle.
More shots fired, squad. More shots fired.
More shots fired.
And I know you were able to edit that, but that just shows how quickly this escalated.
Yeah, and this sort of puts everything in
So
context.
Facebook,
So what you heard first was you heard that
the person was Hispanic that did the
There was
shooting.
a man threatening his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend in the
The
parking
person was
lot,
Hispanic
threatening to take her
and
life
basically
and
just
his
shot
life.
outside of Mercy
They were
Hospital and
responding
inside
to that.
Mercy
They
Hospital.
knew it was happening
From what
outside
the
emergency room.
Broadcastify
And
app
almost
is saying.
Within a minute, you heard that first report of shots fired.
So it is possible that this was a murder-suicide, because he eventually, I mean, he opened fire on others as well. He died this afternoon. It's unclear whether he was shot by police or whether he shot
Well, we do
himself.
know that the officer was shot too, just minutes between the time the shooter was shot, the officer was also shot.
You know, one thing that was very telling, one of our eyewitnesses this afternoon, who said he was familiar with firearms, said he distinctly heard the sound of rifle shots and also handgun shots. Now, the first thing I thought when I heard that was, well, the rifle with the gunman and the handguns would be Chicago police officers, possibly, but again, that's pure speculation.
Yeah.
And this situation is still unfolding tonight as to exactly what happened. Again, I did want to clarify from Chicago Fire, they are saying this is the final on the active shooter. Chicago Fire
I think, Joy, I'm not sure. I know I heard it over the scanner. They said the gunman was Hispanic.
Third victim transported.
Somebody said he was black, and that was unconfirmed. They just said the gunman is Hispanic. The gunman is not black. The gunman is Hispanic. The shooting happened at 3:16 p.m. I'm actually at McCormick Place. They got the little monitor screens in here. I'm actually at McCormick Place in the Metro train station waiting area.
Robin Ellison, when an incident of this magnitude happens, there are concentric circles of response. In other words, from the center at Mercy Hospital out, we have many, many different layers of ambulances and police and fire trucks, all as backup, depending on how the situation pans out. Right now, behind me, you see this police tape that's been extended along 26th Street and a bus. What they're doing is trying to let all the people who were trapped in this responding emergency, like the bus, for example, like pedestrian cars and workers' cars, get out of the area. We talked to one person who, in fact, is just now able to get her car, who lives in the area, and came home at the very same time as this was coming down, and she tells us what she went through trying to figure out what was going on in front of her building.
I saw the cop cars coming, and then all of a sudden one of the undercover cops, he was outside screaming, "Get out of the area, there's an active shooter, he has a rifle, reverse your car." So I reversed my car.
At first you weren't sure what he was saying.
I wasn't sure, yeah, at first I wasn't sure what was going on, because a lot of times we see the ambulance come with a couple of cop cars, so I just thought that's what was going on. And then I rolled down my window and could actually hear the shots being fired. They were sending people outside of the hospital, like trying to get people out of the parking lot as well.
How adamant was the police officer?
He was screaming, get out of the area, reverse your car, there's an active shooter, he has a rifle, and then again I just heard the shots. So
he was looking out for your safety.
Yes, looking out for everybody's safety that was kind of there. There was a car in front of me and a car behind me, as well as a couple of buses that were in the area, so he was just trying to direct people out of the area safely.
The shots you heard, how many, and do you think they were police shooting at the gunman or the active shooter?
I'm not exactly sure. There were like 5 or 6 shots. You could clearly hear shots being fired. At that point, I didn't see a ton of cops in the area yet, like there are now.
This is just when it began.
Just when it began. And again, people were they were kind of getting people over the fence in the parking lot, and the undercover cop was just screaming at us to get out of the area.
You're okay, but you still can't get to your house, your apartment,
exactly,
or your car.
Exactly, my car is stuck, and then I didn't want to just sit inside of my car because I was a little nervous about that, so then I went into the Enterprise and hung out with those guys to try to figure out exactly what was going on.
So Rebecca is indicative of, or exemplary of other people we spoke to who literally had the only clothing they had on when this all started to come down, and that is, for her, a sweater or a light coat. Other people we've spoken to just had a sweater on, as police were ordering them out of their car or off the sidewalk or off the bus or into their offices for protection. Literally, they came down that fast, and as she told you, the police were screaming at them, to protect them and trying to do what they could because they weren't sure what was going on at the time. Now, finally, they're opening up this scene. Some of the different first responders are peeling away because the situation obviously has been resolved.
Exactly, Cassandra. Exactly.
There's so much sadness to deal
with.
They
said, Sister Montgomery, they said 4 plus the Chicago police is shot very critical. The gunman is the one that's dead. He was shot dead.
Critically injured. Reporting live at 26th in Michigan, Dick Johnson, NBC.
The gunman is the only one dead. Multiple people shot. Chicago police officer extremely critical.
Yes, and it's been approximately 3 hours now since the shooting, and of course one of the
it happened at 3:16 p.m.
Police officer in critical condition at this hour, being treated at the University of Chicago Hospital. Let's go to Lisa Chavarria for an update on the situation there. Lisa.
Well, good evening, Allison. At this point, we are still in a holding pattern, waiting for Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson to arrive. They're expected to hold a press conference. Let me go ahead and show you what we're waiting on here. You can see that the Chicago
That's the area I was going to go and go live, but that's only, that area is blocked off, so I couldn't get there in a quick time.
and that is what we are waiting on. And again, we were told that it could happen as early as 6 o'clock. Obviously now we're approaching 6:23. We're not given an exact time as to when we are going to get that official word. But again, what we're being told is that Superintendent Eddie Johnson will be addressing the media and talking about this officer. At last check, the last update, official update I should say, that we are receiving from the Chicago Police Department is that this officer...
Yeah, I was at the Burger King. I heard the shots and I was at the Burger King.
And we were expecting that at any point, but right now we are...
I was at the Burger King between 23rd and 24th because I was going to go and check out the Obama thing at the McCormick place, and I just heard the same shots he said. I heard it too, especially from 23rd to 25th, you know, especially when there's a lot of high rises, it's going to echo like that.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Thank you, Lisa.
The first priority of Superintendent Eddie Johnson and Mayor Emanuel usually is to deal
most likely possible.
Of a police
That's what they're saying right now.
Wounded, and you need to get the family members together and meet with them usually before they announce any information. Mike Lorber is in Sky.
My job where I work at overnight.
You've been
my job where I work at overnight. We supposed to be doing a drill like this.
Facts that you've picked up along
you know, because people can come in workplaces and do this, so we're supposed to be doing a drill like this.
In the last 5 or 10 minutes,
an active shooter drill.
Officers come in with their lights flashing, heading towards the University of Chicago. So more and more officers, as they are released from duty, whether it be at Mercy Hospital or other places, arriving here at the University of Chicago. We heard one more.
The police said the police officer is very critical.
So that was a dispatch. We're not sure if anybody else was injured.
And that's not good when they say extremely critical. That's not good.
Some streets open there, but again, they have a lot of investigation.
Now it shows a lot what Chicago is. Anytime,
inside of Mercy Hospital.
I mean, I hate to say this. Anytime some damn asshole go into the hospital, they shoot somebody.
Situations as well.
You go into a hospital and shoot somebody. That shows what Chicago really is, man.
Warming buses, and I want to repeat again.
That shows what Chicago really is. He goes into a hospital.
Martin Luther King Drive. People who are family members.
And my job is supposed to be having an active training, active shooter training drill. Because my job is in the West Loop, and I work overnight, and we're supposed to be doing an active shooter drill. I think they said tomorrow or something. After we get off from the overnight shift.
As more officers arrive here, no street closures in the area.
I'm gonna keep this live going for some time because I'm in McCormick Place, so I have my battery pack with me.
We're live here at the U of C Hospital. I'm Mike Lorber in Sky 5.
Certainly been a very long afternoon for the people waiting for word. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. And again, the first radio call of shots fired came in at 3:16 this afternoon.
I was right. I said 3:15, but the news said 3:16.
Mercy Hospital.
So I was right. I was right on point.
Members of the Mercy Hospital team have been coming out. Our reporters have been talking to them about where they were when this happened and what they had to do to stay safe and also to keep patients calm and safe. And their stories, I think, by telling them or helping them to process just what they went through tonight, many of them, in fact, all of them we've heard from, cannot wait to get home and hug their families. Let's go back to Natalie Martinez and see who she's been talking to. Natalie.
I thought they said the gunman was the only one dead. That's
basically who were coming to the hospital.
Oh, okay, 2 people dead. Okay, thank you, Cassandra. I see it now.
Spoke to one man who said he was
so the gunman and the girlfriend is dead.
Had a gun, who was laser focused, who walked through the parking lot with some intent.
Because over the radio said it was an AR-15. That's something that you see in the military.
He says about 4 minutes later he heard shooting. He believes he saw the gunman. We spoke to another woman just within the past half hour or so, and she tells us she was in the surgery floor. She's an employee there. She's been there for 3 years.
Exactly.
She says, like many others that Dick and
I think she was like a receptionist, they said.
They just had training for an active shooter, so it was fresh on her mind what they should do. They ducked, they hid, and they waited to get the all clear from police so that they knew that it was okay to leave. We've spoken to a father and a son who were on the phone with the mom and wife, and they said they didn't know if and when she was okay. All they knew is that she was on the phone with them. She was trying to whisper. They told her to keep quiet until she got the okay from police to get out of there. This had gone on for about an hour and a half that we were out here with them. When we were speaking to someone else, they had left the scene, presumably to go meet up with her somewhere. We haven't talked to them then, but this is just, if you can imagine that kind of stress, the not knowing what was going on with somebody who you love and care for, who's in there holed up and not knowing themselves if they're going to get out safely or alive or when they would get out of there. All these stories coming from different people who are here for different reasons, and it's very stressful. It's heart-wrenching when you really think about what everybody's going through, whether they were directly involved or whether they heard something, whether they were on an upper floor. This is difficult for a lot of people to deal with, and understandably so. So we're seeing that it's getting a lot quieter here in terms of people on the scene who are just civilians in the area. However, police presence, as you can see behind me, has not dissipated. In fact, they did put this police tape up just a few minutes ago, whereas they didn't have it up within the past hour. Still a huge line of police cars, still police standing in uniform along this line right at 26th and Michigan. Several fire trucks, several squads. There's so much presence here, and nobody's moving just yet until we hear, presumably from Eddie Johnson in the next several minutes, what's happening. So from here, that's the latest what's going on. Like you said, every once in a while somebody's coming out to give us another story, but a lot of them have already gone home and went, like you said, Allison, and some of our other reporters, to hug those that they love, and thank God that they're okay. We'll send it back to you.
Nice job, Natalie. Thank you. We want to remind our viewers that normally we normally have nightly news at 5:30. We promised you nightly news at 6:30, but because we are still continuing to wait for this news conference to unfold, we want to tell you that nightly news, you can watch it on our digital channel 5.2. If you would like to watch nightly news, go to our digital channel 5.2.
You're getting a sense of the secondary impact of this on so many people. Obviously, we have 4 people at least directly wounded today. As we look at the news conference, the upcoming news conference that we hope to be going to soon, but we have no exact word on when that's going to start. But in the days ahead at Mercy Hospital, and for the first responders as well, you will be hearing that they're going to be getting counseling, and they'll be providing that for all the employees.
Let's listen in.
Press conference, hold on.
Yeah. But when it's bad, is it like really bad?
They're just doing an audio check here as they get ready for this police briefing. We have yet to have, we've gotten some tweets and some information from the Chicago Police Department. They've obviously had their hands full this afternoon, but it appears that they're getting closer to having that news briefing as they do audio checks.
And our Mike Glover is above the University of Chicago Hospital, again with the trauma center that was able to treat this police officer as well as another one of the shooting victims in critical condition. We are also, again, wanting to remind you that police investigating this case, they're investigating whether the shooter was an ex-fiance and shot the female attending physician. And again, Phil Rogers, in giving us some of that inside the conversation today on police dispatch, we did also hear on that, confirming that there was a relationship between the shooter and one of the victims today. And again, the shooter was shot and was pronounced dead at the scene. The police officer was also shot just minutes between the police officer being shot and the shooter being shot. And as you pointed out, Rob, we're not sure whether this was a murder-suicide with the shooter shooting himself or if the officer shot him.
We do know, though, according to at least the broadcastified audio that Phil Rogers shared with us, the initial call 316 was a man with a gun threatening an ex-girlfriend and suicidal at the same time. That is the incident that sparked all of this. It then escalated into even more than that, and we're going to find out.
He was using an assault rifle too, which was also elevating the situation there. Lisa Chavarria, are we going to Trina Orlando? Trina Orlando, I'm sorry, is again joining us. She's been on the scene throughout this afternoon, bringing us everyone's stories, those who saw what happened, and for those who were inside the hospital terrified of what could happen. Let's go to Trina.
Yeah, Allison, so many stories out here today, all of them coming from inside and outside of Mercy Hospital here at 26th and Michigan. You can see here a large police presence remains outside here. They just put some new police tape up here across 26th Street, blocking the intersection here as police continue to do their work. For a while, we were seeing a steady stream of employees and people from inside the building coming out of the hospital. That has kind of dwindled now. We are seeing, a few people here and there still making their way home for the evening. A lot of them coming up to us and asking us exactly what happened, asking us how the police officer is doing, asking us what happened to the gunman, trying to get a better sense of exactly what played out around them today. Many of them so caught up in the chaos of the moment that they simply didn't actually know what was going on. A lot of them very shaken up and traumatized by what they experienced today, and telling us that they just want to go home and be with their families this evening. We are going to continue to stay out here talking to anyone who may still be in the area who witnessed anything today, and we will bring you those stories throughout the evening. For now, we are live outside of the hospital. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Trina. Amazing still how many first responders are on the scene there at Mercy.
It's a huge operation, and the investigation is going to be massive and take a long, long time. Let's go back to Mike Lorber. And Mike, do you have any sense, you said that when you were looking at University of Chicago, but back at Mercy, did you get a sense that there was still, how much work is Mercy Hospital able to do tonight? Are you getting any word on that?
I am listening to dispatches here from the Chicago Police and Fire Department that, as we spoke about, several of these patients rushed out of the hospital into warming buses or other locations. Now they're checking those warming buses. They're trying to account for all the patients who were in the hospital and then see whether or not they can still be treated there, or if they need further treatment, or if the facilities in the hospital are usable. For example, we heard several shots fired near radiology. Perhaps that radiology department isn't usable anymore. This is obvious, but Mercy Hospital is now on what the medical dispatch calls bypass, meaning no more patients coming to the hospital. However, for the patients who were already there, who were not shot, they may not be able to be treated there, at least some of them anymore. So what we're hearing are ambulances going in there, assessing the patients, kind of a reassessment, and then taking them, if need be, to other locations, perhaps here at the University of Chicago or other nearby hospitals. So when we talked about 15 minutes ago about an ambulance going into Mercy, that would be one of the reasons that may be taking place. And again, they're talking about a lot of the medical professionals and friends and family of both the patients and employees gathering in that east lot, east of Mercy Hospital, near 27th and King Drive. That's the latest. We're still here at the University of Chicago.
Yeah, concerned to that officer. When they say extremely critical, that's not good.
I'll ask you another question, Mike. You've covered a lot of investigations. What is going on in terms of the police investigation at Mercy Hospital into this shooting this afternoon? Take us through what they have to do in terms of shell casings and isolating areas. What are the steps that they're going to have to go through and are going through as we speak?
Brad, we heard the dispatches, and we heard how many shots were fired, and we heard the type of weapon that was used. And even though there are witnesses to the shooter, and the shooter has been shot himself, they still have to do a thorough investigation, shell casings of every bullet that they can find, and think just about how many of those bullets there may be. So now that all the patients may be secured in and out of Mercy Hospital, that's when that investigative process really kicks in. The other part of the process is they still have to do a thorough search of a rather large hospital. There may be patients who are just hiding, for example. They have to make sure that they search every corner, every closet of that hospital, make sure that everything is all right. We've heard initial dispatches of injuries, but until the police can get inside, first make sure that that hospital is clear of anybody else who may be a patient, and then they start what is a very, very lengthy investigative process.
All right, Mike Lorber, thank you so much for your insight into the investigation that is ongoing at this hour. And again, we want to tell our viewers who are hoping to see Nightly News, you can watch Nightly News by going to our digital channel 5.2. Again, go to the digital channel 5.2 for NBC Nightly News. We are obviously staying with this story because it has been unfolding throughout the afternoon, and we are awaiting to find out official information from Chicago Police. We're hoping to hear from Eddie Johnson and find out how this officer is doing, as well as what they've been able to find out about what happened today, the active shooter situation at Mercy Hospital. And again, we have been piecing together details, but we want to hear officially what Chicago Police are willing to tell us at this hour. And hopefully momentarily, we will have that news conference for you.
The most important question, of course, the conditions of the people hurt today, particularly the Chicago police officer last listed in critical condition. We have been talking to witnesses throughout the afternoon. We're going to turn around some of that tape, and let's take a listen right now.
You could tell it was more than one shooter because it was pow, 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 pow. It's like exchange. It was like exchange. So we barricaded ourselves in the utility room, and then so SWAT came in and pulled us out. But we knew they were still in the building. We heard cold blue twice. So somebody died, either twice or two people died. So this is really a bad tragedy because we was coming out right as it was happening. We ducked behind our cars, but we had to run back and retreat because they was blasting at the police car, where it threw the police car back in reverse. Whoever that was, they did not care.
They were all in a maroon car to start with?
The maroon, it looked like a maroon Charger that jumped the curb to flee from it. Then you heard some more shooting, and then they started shooting at the police cars.
Did somebody get out of the car and get into the hospital?
That I did not see. But how we knew if they were in the hospital, because they kept calling Cold Silver. That means barricade yourself where you are. And so that's all I know.
And you were just trying to get radiation?
I just received radiation. I had to fall on my knees to my car because the gunshots were so close. You could tell it was either right here. He wasn't in the building yet. But when that Charger flew and jumped the curb and made a right, and then the police pulled in and they exchanged fire like bow, bow, they shot the police car. The car went in reverse. The police car CPD had to go in reverse. And then the detectives came and then they drew their guns. Then you heard some more gunfire. And that's when I retreated inside, back inside, and we had to barricade ourselves in the utility room. So SWAT came and got us out.
Do you think one of the men in that car actually got into the hospital?
I believe they were in the hospital to start with after the shooting, because it was cold blue twice. Now, I've been in the medical field and I've been a security officer for years. I know those codes, I know when they him. And they were in the building. Then the young man that just came, I'm a patient here. I've been a patient here for over 4 years because I'm battling cancer. They shot the lab up. The lab technician that I know, he walked past me and said he came in there and shot 8 times. We heard cold blue twice, and they were like 5 minutes apart. So either that person coded twice or it's 2 different people that coded. I'm telling you, this was more than one shooter because the exchange was 2. It was pow, 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 pow. And when the police came in, they shot the police car. They had to retreat and reverse.
Cancer patient recounting what she heard. There was not more than one shooter, I think, because there were so many shots, perhaps in exchange with the police, that she thought there was more than one shooter. But our best information is one shooter, and he is dead.
And that was Tracy Lyons. Again, she was a cancer patient being treated at Mercy Hospital this afternoon when the shooting broke out. You're taking a live look right now from the ground. We've been showing you from the air, but this is on the ground outside of the University of Chicago Hospital. A lot of blue lights there as officers come to support a officer who's been critically wounded in this shooting tonight, gathering there to show their love and support for their fellow officer. We have a news conference that we have been waiting for since 6 o'clock this evening. Again, we continue to wait to hear officially from Chicago PD, not only on the condition of the officers, but on the other victims involved in this shooting, as well as what information they've been able to find out about exactly what happened today outside Mercy Hospital and then inside the hospital. We do know that the shooter is dead. We also have heard reports that another victim of the shooting has died. We are then also being told that there were 4 other victims in this shooting. But again, we need to find out from Chicago PD officially how many people were involved in this terrible tragedy at Mercy Hospital this afternoon.
It all began 3:16 this afternoon with that initial call as we bring Phil Rogers back into this.
Can I just point out, too, looking at these officers comforting one another, these shootings, I know we cover them every day in neighborhoods, and unfortunately today it's Mercy Hospital, but just the trauma and the human suffering that happens when these shootings happen, and that it's a ripple effect.
And, so many people. And you know, this is a family, their family, and they stick up for each other. And they see so many things every day, terrible things all around the city, and today it's one of their own. They had a commander shot and killed in February this year, Paul Bauer, and we don't know the latest on this officer, but this is a very tough day for the Chicago Police Department.
Sometimes we look at them as police officers. They're the ones who are strong, and as Phil pointed out, they're the ones running in as shots are being fired where everybody else is evacuating. But again, in this moment, seeing those hugs and the tears, you realize too, they are just human beings like everybody else, and they are suffering tonight.
This is as tough a day as you can get. If we have Lisa Chevalier, we should probably go to her for the latest on the news conference. Lisa, what can you tell us about this news conference? Is this going to happen?
Yes, Rob and Allison, we are expecting it to happen, but as far as what time that could happen, it is very fluid at this point. We are still waiting on Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson. I can tell you just a couple of minutes ago, I'm going to step out of the way. We are inside of one of the buildings here at the University of Chicago Medical Center. Across the way from us, which is outside, we saw a number of police officers. Lots of blue lights came rushing through. By the time that we ran outside, because again, we have to sort of bundle up ourselves and rush out there, we did see a number of additional officers that were on the exterior of the emergency room here at the University of Chicago Medical Center. As far as who may be coming, that is what we're still working to find out for you. But here again is the official update that we have from Chicago Police at this point. At last check, this officer was last listed in critical condition, and we've been seeing so many Chicago police officers coming to the scene. And of course, as I've been telling you, as we've been standing here throughout most of the evening, so many of them very distraught, obviously. This is something that is so difficult for them to go through, to see one of their own wounded in this way, again in critical condition. We are still trying to get an update for you as far as when that press conference will start, but at this point that time is fluid, so we are still monitoring anything that happens out here. We are bringing that to you, and of course we will bring you that press conference once that happens. Reporting live from the University of Chicago Medical Center, Lisa Chavaria, NBC5 News.
Lisa, thank you. We completely understand they have to notify every member of every family affected by this before they can talk to us.
All right, Trina Orlando for us once again outside of Mercy Hospital. Trina, it looks like that police presence behind you has not dissipated at all.
No, not at all, Allison. A huge police presence remains outside here from the hospital. You can see that taking place behind me here. They still have the street blocked off. This intersection completely closed. We have fire trucks here, police cruisers. We also have ambulances in front of the hospital. We see some new ambulances actually pulling up in front of the hospital. It's not clear what those ambulances are here for. We had heard at one point that all traffic was being diverted away from the hospital, so it's not clear if maybe those ambulances are here to bring patients out of the hospital or if they are somehow connected to this shooting. We're not sure what they are doing here, but we have seen a few new ambulances pull up in front of the hospital here just within the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. And I'm not sure if you can see in the distance there, there are some people walking in and out of the hospital. Not sure, again, what those people are doing at this hour, but a huge police presence here as this investigation continues here at Mercy Hospital at 26th and Michigan. We have been talking to people here throughout the day about their stories, what they heard, what they saw, both inside and outside of the hospital. I want to play one of those interviews for you right now. And we apologize, we were not able to get that interview for you, but we have been talking to people here outside of the hospital about what they saw, what they heard, what they experienced. So many people telling us they heard the gunshots, they saw the gunfire taking place, they saw people being treated, and I'm being told actually that we do have that interview for you now, so we'll go ahead and play that for you right now.
We started taking patients to the back as we confirmed there was an active shooter in the hospital. As soon as we went to the back rooms, all we wanted to do is, and we did, close the doors, put heavy stuff behind the doors so the shooter will make it harder for him to even come in if it was to that point as he would go to the second floor.
It just didn't feel like it was real. As we were standing here, more and more cops come and they would pull and stop right in front of us, jump out of their vehicles and grab automatic rifles. And as I was standing here, they were coming from behind me. They were coming from every part of the streets, and they all had guns out. And I wasn't sure if I should run and try to seek better shelter or what I should do. I was just never been in such a situation.
And the one sentiment that we are hearing over and over from so many people here is this just didn't seem real. They heard the gunshots, they saw the commotion, but it was just hard to believe that this was actually happening here at the hospital that they were working. And they say they underwent training for this about a month ago. They practiced for this. They were prepared. They knew what to do. And they are saying that they are very thankful that they had that training when this real tragedy did strike here today. We are live outside of Mercy Hospital in Trina, Orlando. We'll send it back to you.
Trina, thank you so much. And it really is amazing how every single person that we've talked to today has had that moment of like, did this really happen? I can't believe this really happened.
And a moment where so many of them, especially those who work there, had to step up today and meet a tremendous responsibility that they'd never been tested before. Dick Johnson is at Mercy Hospital. He's been talking to many of those people today. Let's check back in with Dick.
Rob and Allison, it's one thing to hear what people went through. It's another thing to see what they went through. We now have cell phone video from Dennis Burke, who teaches TV production, ironically, at Columbia College. Take a look at this. I believe this is the video we have queued up now for you. It is he coming home for lunch as all this just unfolds in front of his eyes, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing, but had the wherewithal to focus his iPhone on the scene, including the gunshots that happened out in the parking lot, we believe, and a very harrowing scene. Inside the hospital, many people who work there, and patients, of course, as we told you, including a woman named Rosa, who we spoke to about an hour ago.
The only thing we just mainly heard was gunshots.
That's enough. What did you do at that point?
We immediately took the patients in the room, closed all the doors, locked everything up, shut some lights off, and just waited.
But what was going through your head?
Well, the worst. Hoping that everybody will be okay, worried about the people in the waiting area.
How did you keep them safe, and obviously some of them not in great health, I would assume?
They reacted very well. We did. We told them that everything's okay, that we were with them. They knew all the doors were locked. They felt safe. But of course, everybody's scared deep inside. Everybody's scared of what's going on.
Did you hear any shots initially?
Yes, there was I think 4 on the outside. I think I heard 6 on the inside. They were very clear, those shots.
And you knew right away what it was?
Yes.
Some people thought it might have been furniture moving around. You know how you excuse this.
You could hear that those were actual gunshots.
What she heard inside is what Dennis Burke actually shot with his iPhone outside. We're going to let you see that and hear that now. That, we believe, is when the gunman was confronted by the initial confrontation with police as they were trying to approach I don't know if it was just one officer who was critically injured or if it was multiple officers responding. We've gotten different accounts from witnesses. But he was, the person who shot that video was also trying to take cover himself, but had the wherewithal to shoot it. Just amazing to see exactly how it began to unfold here now 3 or 4 hours ago. Back to you, Robin, Allison.
It really is something to hear those gunshots too, because we hear the witnesses saying, no, it was definitely gunshots. And when you hear that video from Mr. Burke, it really does go right through you.
4 or 5 just in the video he had.
Yeah, and in fact, Mike Tarr, our colleague from the Associated Press, talked to an eyewitness I'm seeing here, and they also, that eyewitness counted 10 gunshots. And if we go to what Dick's eyewitness had 6 and 4, that would seem to add up. Well, you know, one of the things that we've been following all afternoon is trying to piece together the sequence. And about half an hour ago, we were able to report on what seems to have been the context of this shooting. It's important that we note that when Chicago police were called to the hospital, it was before this incident had begun. They had a report of a man with a gun at the hospital, and they were trying to find that man who was reportedly threatening a woman. Here's how it sounded as they were informed of that, and then what transpired afterward. Now, we caution you again, we have taken the radio calls and we have done what's called scoping them down. We've taken out the gaps. So what you're about to hear is not actually in real time, but it is the sequence of events of Chicago police responding to the call at Mercy Hospital this afternoon, just about 3:16 p.m.
193 units and 1 on the citywide. Pretty person with a gun. 2525 South Michigan coming in with details to follow. Male Hispanic, 25. Caller says she doesn't see the gun, but he's threatening the shooter and himself. All right, we're getting another call into the emergency room for that person with a gun in front of Mercy's emergency room. We're getting a male white, black hat, white hoodie, and black coat. Says he has a gun and he's threatening his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend. 10-1, all units, we're getting a 10-1 outside of Mercy Hospital. No further information, shot fired in front of Mercy Hospital.
We got a Michigan. He's in the parking lot. He's in the parking lot, gun in his hand.
All right, we have him in the parking lot with a gun in his hand.
Live shot fired, squad.
We have live shots fired, 4 shots fired in the parking lot of Mercy Hospital.
There's a woman down in the parking lot.
All right, we'll get him running.
Squad, we need more cars. We have to get inside this hospital, squad.
Any available units to Mercy Hospital? All available units to Mercy Hospital. We have a shooter inside the hospital.
This guy's got a rifle. Be careful, guys, what he's got. Shooting assault rifle.
All right, he has an assault rifle. All units be aware he has an assault rifle.
More shots fired, squad. More shots fired.
More shots fired.
Phil, as you put that together, it is unnerving, and you've put together a timeline based on when these calls came in that gives us sort of, I think, the best idea of how this transpired this afternoon. Can you just bring us through that again?
Yeah, it all starts at about 3:16 p.m., and by the time everything is said and done, it's 3:28 p.m. And we should caution about one other thing. When Chicago police received the call, they did get a name, and we have heard that name on the broadcast. We're not reporting it right now because the name has not been confirmed and it has not been released. And of course, the gunman is deceased. We believe we know who perpetrated this crime, and we're just waiting for police to confirm that name.
We can go through the broadcastified timeline if you'd like right now. 3:16, that first radio call came in. The officer radios in at 3:19 that the suspect was in the parking lot with that gun, an assault rifle. 3:21, the call that the woman was shot in the parking lot. 3:23, so just 2 minutes later, the officer warns the suspect has the assault rifle. 3:24, calls of more shots fired. And then 3:26, calls a female was shot inside the hospital lobby. 3:29, the first call that the officer had been shot in the east lobby. 3:29, that the offender had been shot in the head. And then at 3:45, first call, officer inside hospital saying the offender was down inside radiology. So different departments of that hospital on that main floor involved in this. And we also heard that from the witnesses who did what they learned to do in the training, was to hide.
And in addition to the audio that we have, we also have some video with audio that was shot by a man who happened to be in the area right at the time. Let's listen to it one more time. Do you have that queued up?
Right now, this is Mike Lorber, I believe, giving us some video from
That's a
Sky
live picture
5.
right there.
Again, video from Dennis Burke, and more than just what you're seeing, it's what we heard on this video that we have from one of our viewers who just happened to be coming home from work and had his phone with him and just started to roll. And when we hear those gunshots, you definitely know those are gunshots. I know sometimes people will say, oh, I think it was gunshots. Those were
and multiple gunshots, and there were more than we just heard. And one woman that we heard earlier, the cancer patient, thought that there were more than one gunman. It proved not to be that.
Which may have been the return fire from the police officer,
Absolutely.
too. But he did have an assault rifle, and again, I'm not sure exactly what we're seeing here. Can we go to Mike Lorber and Sky 5 and find out what we're looking at?
Allison, as Chicago Police Department are working the scene of Mercy Hospital, and as they're waiting word on their injured officer at University of Chicago Hospital, another incident takes place here at 41st and State Street involving what the dispatch said was a Cook County officer and a person down on the ground. So we'll get more information on that as it becomes available. Live at 41st and State, Mike Lorber and Sky 5.
All right, thank you, Mike.
We are waiting for the police news conference. We're not sure when that's going to happen. We're going to run it on our NBCChicago.com, and you can get it on the app. We'll be streaming it live when it occurs. The show The Voice is coming up at 7 o'clock. We are going to stay on this throughout the night with a full report at 10 o'clock.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Again, we'll see you tonight at 10 for the very latest.
I'm gonna cut this live short, and I'll be back for that press conference.
I'm here because The Voice taught me